Louis, good to have you back. We know you're calling the game tonight with Dan Orlovsky and Chris Fowler, so good to have you in the ATL to do that for our viewing audience back in Buffalo. We've been trying to get a handle on just what this Falcons team is, because as you know, they've alternated wins and losses each of their first 4 games, coming off the bye here. And I don't know what it is. Steve and I were talking about this earlier. It just feels like there's something missing from their operation. I don't know if it's not sweating the details. I don't know if it's a lack of urgency. There just seems to be something missing, because you look at that talent and you're like, there should be a lot more results from this group.
Sure. Look, I think, they would probably frame it a little bit differently, but ultimately the results are what they want to. They do feel that they are, from a talent standpoint, better than what their record indicates, for sure, over the past 2 games that they had prior to the bye. When you're looking at Carolina and then looking at Washington, that they look like polar opposite teams. And a lot of times, the margins aren't really that wide between what looks like a real poor performance and a real good performance. A lot of times that is about the details in particular, as you mentioned. And I think what they're going to find out tonight is just exactly where early on in the season where they stack up. Look, Buffalo is a game in a team in which a lot of people look at as a measuring stick for them, because look, Buffalo is, and I'm going to say this later on tonight, Buffalo is chasing greatness. They're chasing immortality, so to speak, in the form of a Super Bowl championship. That's really all that matters to them, is getting to the Super Bowl and winning one. The Falcons are chasing relevance. They want to be relevant in the greater discussion when you're talking about contenders in the NFL, and what better way to do that than to come out and put together a good performance against a Buffalo team that they are more than capable of doing. It's just a matter of whether or not you can string together enough plays and enough series over 3 hours in order to get the job done. We'll see.
And certainly, the Bills have been, they're 5-time defending division champs, and all of that stuff going on. A lot of it has to do with the engine, the guy taking snaps, the offense. Josh Allen, the offense, they're cranking out 30 points a game. They did it all last year. They were undefeated at home. They got all that going on. But when they put out a game like they did last week, now certainly 3 turnovers, that was the difference in the game. It was a 3-point win by the Patriots on the road, tough environment in Buffalo, but Buffalo helped them. And that's really what it has looked like under Sean McDermott. If you're going to beat this team, it's going to be a close loss for the Bills, and they're going to have to help you. Certainly the Bills are capable of doing that. They showed us last week. But it doesn't, from us, when you try and find things that are wrong with this team, you start with, the fact that their defense is middle of the pack.
Yep.
And if their offense stumbles, man, it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, look, I think, you understand, as you just kind of really alluded to, Steve, like, there's a certain way that they want to play. And if they don't play that way, then obviously they have the great equalizer in 17 that a lot of times can make things right for them. But they don't want to live in that world. And I think the way in which they want to play is a winning formula in the NFL. Look, they have a dominant offensive line 1 through 5. When they are healthy, they can control the line of scrimmage against any team in the NFL. Okay, and James Cook, as much as we'll talk about Bijan Robinson tonight, James Cook can control the game on the ground as well as any running back in the NFL. The tight ends, look, Dalton Kincaid, provided that he's healthy and he's going to go and all, like, Dalton has really established a great connection with Josh to the degree where he can control the middle of the field as well as anyone. If there's one knock, and I know Brandon knows about this too, but that being Brandon Bean, that, because I'm sure he gets hit up about this. If there's one knock, do they have a home run hitter? Do they have an alpha on the perimeter? A guy who they know that in crunch time, like, Josh is always going to look to this one guy? No, look, they subscribe to the principle of everyone can eat at any given time. And Khalil Shakir is an underrated wide receiver in the NFL. He just is. But I think they have more than enough ingredients right now that if they eliminate the stuff that really, came up and bit them in the rear end a week ago, then they'll be good to go. Defensively, do they have, those 2 or 3 signature game closers? No, they probably don't. Can Greg Rousseau be that guy? Yeah. Has Joey been that guy before? Yeah. At the linebacker position, is Terrell Bernard one of the better inside linebackers, 3-down inside linebackers in the NFL? Yeah, I do believe that. In the secondary, they don't have that one dude, but they play a team brand of football. And it's gotten them to the point where, look, Steve, you know as well as I do, just like all your listeners, barring something catastrophic, which knock on wood does not happen to this football team because we don't want to see that. They're going to be there in the end. They're going to be there and they're going to be challenging to go out to Santa Clara and play in that Super Bowl. They just are.
Yeah.
So they need to kind of like continue to build, stack, develop, especially on that defensive line, get guys healthy, and then see where it all shakes out in the end.
Yeah, speaking again, guys, healthy, Louis. Ed Oliver returns to the lineup for the first time since week 1.
Yep.
And we really saw last week what his absence means when they're in a tight ball game, because second half, Patriots come out with split backs. They double team the ends because they say our guys guard to guard can handle whoever you're putting on the field defensively on the interior because you don't have Ed Oliver. And it worked.
Yeah.
Ed Oliver's back in the middle tonight. How can he be a force multiplier for this defensive frontier?
Well, look, since he came into the league, I think he's at the top of the heap when you're talking about defensive tackles in terms of stuff percentage, tackles at or behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, so the objective stats speak for themselves. What he brings. He has to play at least the interior of the Atlanta offensive line to a stalemate and or play a half a yard to a yard on their side of the line of scrimmage to slow down this inside-outside zone run game that they got. Because if you can't ever make Bijan Robinson stutter his feet a little bit, and he can just stay on track and press this hole and then hit it, Bijan will cut you a new one. Simple as that. So he's critical. And we talked to Terrell Bernard last night. He said, look, having Ed back is critical. How's his win going to be? How's he going to be for 4 quarters? Those are the questions you have to ask. But some of the youngsters have to step up. They just do. The linebackers in this game have to play, and they do. Look, Shaq and Terrell and Dorian, all these guys play downhill with physics. I mean, that's how Sean coaches it, and you got to play it this way. But you are absolutely right. Ed has to have one of those games, and Joey and Greg have to be able to set the edges. They cannot be soft on the perimeter. Those dudes, they got to play their best game.
Yeah, we've seen this offense when I've been watching the Atlanta Falcons and some of their games this season. Certainly, Bijan Robinson is a centerpiece for them, but Michael Penix, he's got a live arm. He's a lefty, so it always catches a little off guard when you turn the tape on. I got to tell you, I like their skill guys. London is really good. Kyle Pitts, of course. Mooney has been playing extremely well. They really showed up in some of the games to this point. I think they lose a little efficiency in Michael Penix's, and I can't believe that we're at this point in the NFL, at this point in history. He doesn't like to run. He'll do it with his arm. He's reluctant to get that first down, dive, slide for the first down, and keep that team on the field. I think that's the only inefficiency I see in his game. Other than that, it's just a little more accurate with the ball, making better deliveries when he's on the move, that kind of thing. But man, oh man, this offense, like Brownie said at the top of this thing, man, when they hit it on all cylinders, man, they are a load.
No doubt, they are. I mean, and Steve, you're describing it perfectly. Like, really, the one word that you come up with is they're a very rhythmic offense. If it's in rhythm and it's on time, and Michael never has to pat the ball in the pass game, and it's literally sit in the pistol, get the ball, catch and look and throw, you're in for a long night.
Right.
You're in for a long night because then he can catch, look, hand it off to Bijan, catch, turn, play fake, play action shot you. And ironically, the further down the field he throws the football, the more accurate he gets. When you back him up short and intermediate, that's when stuff kind of gets haywire. So really the thing you're talking about is you have to get him off rhythm. You have to get him where he catches the ball and looks that he's not throwing. Then its eyes come down. Then it's where's number 2? Where's number 3? And by that time, that's where Greg and Joey Bosa have to be like, well, you don't have that time because now we've got you. And if you do not tackle Bijan Robinson and have, it was great because Bobby Babbitt said, look, we have to make sure that Bijan sees a sea of red, white, and blue all night long. If you don't have 11 hats to the ball, he's going to make the first guys. How many times on a percentage basis is the first guy going to get Bijan Robinson down? So, yeah, they have got speed. They've got size. Drake London's a beast. And Kyle Pitts, Kyle Pitts has become someone who now is playing with confidence. He's playing for a new contract. He's in a contract year. Michael Penix and him get along much better. They have a great rapport. Michael holds him accountable. You tell me what defensive back, what safety or inside backer can deal with Michael Pitts with Kyle Pitts when he is locked in. There isn't anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're scary. They're scary.
Yeah.
Flipping it over to the Falcons defense, they have pass rushing talent. Leonard Floyd and the 2 first-round picks, can really bend the edge.
Mm-hmm.
I just find it interesting. Their sack percentage looks good, but you watch them on film and they don't look as terrorizing as maybe they do on paper. And again, I keep coming back to this thing like, man, the talent is there. Where is the down in, down out, series in, series out ability that these players have within them? And I know some of it's on the back end. I know Mike Hughes has been victimized on the outside, and maybe that's an area the Bills look to exploit tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But their linebackers are good. Divine Diablo and Caden Ellis are athletes. They move them around as chess pieces. Again, I just don't feel like it's an 11-man unit that's just screaming at you for 4 quarters.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. There's a lot of great individual pieces there. They have the opportunity right now to come together and really have a breakout style game. And then the question is, and look, you guys know in the NFL, as I used to be told all the time when I was in the league, and I'm sure, Steve, you've heard this before in your career, although you were one of the best players ever. It's not whether or not you can do it one time. It's whether you can do it the next week and the next week and the next week. And that's what separates average from good, good to great, great from guys who go in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Famers are able to call upon that talent over and over and over in the biggest spots and over and over. Buffalo is Atlanta's more than capable. These kids just have to, and I say kids, because there's so much youth on this football team, they just need to have some success and stack those successes, week after week, and they could be a very dangerous team. At all 3 levels, they've got athletes. And I mean premium, if you want to use college football vernacular, premium 5-star athletes. They've got them. Look, James Pierce is athletically maybe in the top 3 or 4 pound for pound in the NFL. You're talking about a 6'5", 250-pound guy who runs 4.46. He can get it. Jalen Walker won the Butkus Award. He can rush the passer and play off ball. Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State is one of the most underrated pass rushers in the NFL. Caden Ellis, you try to block him with a running back, you lose. You lose the game. And AJ Terrell at one point was considered maybe one of the top 3 or 4 man-to-man coverage corners in the NFL. I mean, they just got Xavier Watson, Jesse Bates. They've got dudes everywhere. But it's not about those individual guys. It's about the unit. It's about the collective. And see, that's the one thing that I think sometimes when people look at Buffalo, they go, but they don't have they don't have a bunch of superstars. How are they winning? Because they play like a team.
Yeah.
And we all know that. We all know it, but we always question it. But in the end, that's why I'm saying Buffalo's going to be there. This tonight is about the Falcons trying to announce, hey, we need to slay one of the big dogs in the NFL and see then if we can do it, the next week and the next week. It's a great measuring stick for them. For Buffalo, it's about saying, okay, let's just show everyone that last week was an aberration. That's not us. That's not how we play. And just do what they do. That's why it's a fantastic matchup for us to call.
Give us an idea of what head coach of the Falcons, Raheem Morris, has had to say about his team. And also, I thought it was a pretty good move when he picked up Jeff Ulbrich, when he put his staff together and Jeff Ulbrich came over as defensive coordinator. I didn't know anything about Zach Robinson, so I don't know anything about the offensive coordinator, but Jeff Ulbrich we've had some experience with here in Buffalo playing against his defenses. What's Raheem Morris say about his team? What's his rhetoric been coming out? What's his message to you guys about, his team and how it's coming together?
Yeah, Raheem is all energy, man. He is – the moment you're in his presence, you feel the juice, the electricity, the wanting to connect with you on a personal level and trying to find whatever in he can with you in order to maximize your strengths. And players love that. The players here in Atlanta love that about him. He's a guy who's coached on both sides of the ball. He's coached wide receivers. He's coached defensive backs. He's kind of got he's got that dual perspective that obviously, can really give a coach an advantage because he can see the game from both sides of the football and relate to all 53 guys on the roster. Not everybody can do that. he feels as though his team is right on the cusp. They're right there. They're right there ready to explode now. Obviously they've turned the page from Kirk to where now they turn the football team over to Michael Penix. Michael just has to kind of get some time in the cockpit now and just kind of gain confidence. Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, who's kind of a, he's a Sean McVay West Coast, that kind of Kyle and Sean, that kind of offense, zone blocking scheme, play action pass type of guy. But now he's kind of pulled a little bit of the Mike McDaniel flavor in terms of putting Penix in the pistol like they do down in Miami with Tua. So it's got a little bit of that to it. And they are really a team that can really hit you in multiple ways. They got a lot of self-confidence, a lot of unity, I believe, in this locker room. And they are itching to kind of announce their arrival and say that the team that you saw against Washington and the team you saw against Minnesota is more of who we are, not the team you saw 2 weeks ago against Carolina that wound up pulling their starting quarterback out of the game because he was struggling so bad. So that's how a lot of young teams go. The guys just have to have more time on task in order to kind of figure out that this is how you do it. This is how you sustain it from week to week. And the only way to really find that out, just really where you are, is playing teams like Buffalo. And let me tell you this. Look, Sean McDermott right now, as much as we think we know this football team, because all the primary players are, still in place, every team is different. And as he told us, I'm still trying to find out some things about our team this year, the little nuance about our own team. So I know how to kind of coach it and correct it and continue to develop it as we move down the stretch here. So it's not a well, at Buffalo, we know who we are and we can just roll our helmets out there, and Atlanta's trying to find themselves. No, both of these teams still are trying to find themselves.
Yeah. In your conversations with Raheem, I'm wondering if he addressed what seems to be plaguing them in the red zone, both on offense and on defense. I know there haven't been a lot of possessions by opponents in their red zone. They've only played 4 games, but we know they have the skill position players that could bust off a 60-yard touchdown. They don't even have to get to the red zone and worry about it. But when they get down there, they're in the bottom third of the league on both sides of the ball. I'm curious if Raheem had an answer for that or something he could put his finger on.
No, I think when you're talking about that, it's about the details down there. Obviously, you want to be effective running the football in the red area because the windows are so tight when it comes time to throw it. So you can't get off schedule down there. You can't get behind the sticks. You can't have self-inflicted penalties. You can't have misreads. You can't have wrong routes being run. You can't have bad communication on the back end on the defensive side. You got to be stout with your run. There's a myriad of things that come into why you don't have the kind of efficiency in the red zone offensively and defensively. And you can point to any number of those things that I just talked about. They just got to clean all that stuff up. It's not just one glaring thing or one glaring individual. Down there, it's all about collective communication. I say this all the time on broadcasts. The red zone is my favorite area to talk about because the red area is for smart football players because everything happens so fast and you have no margin for error. And I think with this team, as young as it is, they got to grow to understand that. And I think that's something that's a point of emphasis for them. Let's just put it that way. So we'll see how they improve.
What is if you're, Jeff Ulbrich and the Atlanta Falcons and Raheem Morris, when you look at this Bills offense, certainly James Cook and Josh Allen are at the top of the list, but what do they throw at with this everybody eats mentality? How does that change their philosophy of getting ready for this team?
Yeah. It's one of those where obviously then, the core fundamentals of how you play defense and understanding what the strengths of each defense that you call and what the weaknesses are really become the focal point, along with obviously everything starts with number 17, regardless of who's playing. So you better be great with your pass rush lanes, great with your spy principles, if that's what you use. You better be great on the outside as far as when you play man-to-man coverage. When you play zone, you better have good eyes on Josh at all times. You gotta understand that, hey, look, they're going to hit some of their plays. Josh is going to do those things that only he can do. So very rarely, especially in the passing game, you got to understand that every play basically has 2 plays wrapped into one. There's the one that's supposed to happen on time and in rhythm. And then there's the one that happens when Josh says, well, I don't like what's supposed to happen on time and in rhythm. So now I'm about to pull out my cape and do my thing. And sometimes there ain't nothing you can do about that. And see, that's the frustrating and exhausting thing with playing a guy like Josh Allen, or back in the day playing against a guy like Steve Young, or playing against, guys like John Elway, because you can do it all right. And you sit there and you go, now what am I supposed to do when they start doing that crap? When they start doing those things that aren't coached. And so, yeah, for Jeff Ulbrich, it's kind of like, hey, look, let's focus on our fundamentals. Let's start with 17. Let's try and limit 4's explosive runs. And after that, it's 11 hats to the rock, and you better play physical because you know how this offensive line is going to try and play you.
Yeah. Louis, I don't have to tell you about rabid fan bases. The Bills fans travel well, as you well know. I mean, you watched your older brother and Steve in front of these fans for many years.
Sure did.
They are threatening a takeover here in Atlanta. So keep an eye out for the red, white, and blue jerseys in the stands here tonight, because they're saying they're coming in numbers. But thanks for the time. Have a great call with Chris and Dan tonight.
You bet. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.